Welcome to the fourth day of the Business Analysis Summit 2020. I'm Penny Pullen, and I'm your host for all of these calls in this BA Summit. If you'd like to see a list of all the speakers and their topics, then please visit basummit.com. Today, I'm delighted to be interviewing Paula Bell on the fascinating subject of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Paula is a business analyst. She's a leadership coach. She's a consultant and a speaker, and she's also written books. She has a really huge and wide range of experience in project roles in corporate America. She's led multiple multi-million-dollar transformation projects and currently leads a team of business process consultants. Here's something completely different about Paula. She also holds 2 black belts and is known as a BA martial artist.
Thank you, Penny. It sounds so intimidating, but thank you.
I know. I'm just thinking maybe it's good we're doing this on the phone in case I really mess up. Anyway, no.
Not at all.
It's good to be chatting with you. So, in this session, Paula, you're going to share how diversity is more than ethnicity. Absolutely. We've been talking about that so far in all the sessions so far. But that's what a lot of people think of first. So there are lots of dimensions. Some of those do make us uncomfortable. But the truth is that it's the reality for others. And being comfortable being uncomfortable can help you get over that initial response of avoidance and move towards embracing, but without compromising your own diversity, with the benefit of learning from others. Wow, Paula, thank you for joining us on day 4.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I've been following you for a while, Penny. We've met a couple of times at BBC and other conferences, and it's great to be here with you today.
Brilliant. Let's move on to questions from people all around the world. And we're going to stay in your area of the world, the USA, at the beginning. And Nancy has a question for you, Paula. Nancy asks, how is diversity different from inclusion?
Great question. And this is a great question to actually start this session. So diversity is where you recognize each other's differences and what they bring to the table, their uniqueness, what makes them who they are. Inclusion is deeper. Inclusion is when you actually start to embrace those differences and you accept others' differences to ensure that they feel included and that they have a voice and that they have a place, not only in your organization, but in this world. It allows people to feel as though they're part of something bigger than just themselves. They're part of a solution. And because you not only recognize the differences and the uniqueness that an individual has, but you embrace it and you love it and you want to get to know it, that's where the inclusion really comes in. So a lot of people talk about diversity, but you really can't have diversity if you also don't have inclusion. You're not really going to get that power. You need both. You need to be able to get to the point where even if somebody's different than you, thinks differently than you, it's okay. They have their own journey in life. Your journey defines a lot of the ways you are. I like to say you're a byproduct of your environment a lot of times, what you've grown up, what you've been grown up to know, what you've been taught by your parents or grandparents or other family. That makes up a part of who you are. And so with diversity, there's so many different dimensions to it. You have a lot of people, as I said before, you have the things, the appearance, the first things that you might see, ethnicity, things like that you see. But then there's also other layers that make up an individual, your beliefs, your religion, your financial status, the unique skills that you have, different journeys you've been through bring different perspectives. So there's a lot there. And just because somebody might think differently than you or live differently than you, it's okay. As long as you're respectful, it's okay. Embrace them, get to know them, It's really, really important because diversity brings about more powerful solutions, ideas, and perspectives. So that's what I would say is the difference between diversity and inclusion. Inclusion is deeper. You're getting deeper into that embracing and loving.
So we've had a bit of a gear change in day 4 because today we're completely focused on diversity of people, aren't we? Whereas before we've been thinking, a bit about stakeholders and team members, but mainly thinking strategies and so on as well. But today it's really about people, isn't it?
It really is, yes.
Really focused. And that's so important for business analysts. Right, we're staying in the USA for the second question, which comes from Mac. Mac made a comment before his question saying, thank you very much for hosting this summit on diversity. For Mac, it's a big topic this year, as in their company, they're expanding their inclusion networks and developing an allyship program to support various initiatives in diversity and inclusion. So his question for you, and he sets you out as the BA martial artist, is the following. In working in projects where diversity is an important factor, what are some of the BA tools that you use, and how do you apply those tools to ensure an inclusive solution? Thanks again. Over to you, Paula.
Yes, that is a great question. The first part of the question is very interesting to me. In working in projects where diversity is an important factor, diversity should be an important factor on every project you work on. Because as you said, we're talking about the people. And everybody has diversity. So no matter what project you're on, the people are important. So to me, diversity is important on any project. But what I found when we talk about BA tools and what you can use, a lot of the tools are interpersonal. It's not necessarily, do I use a use case? Do I use a user story? Do I use functional decomposition? Do I use a data mapping document? It's really not about that. One of the most important things that I think you can do as a business analyst is actively listen.
Absolutely.
Not listen to respond, listen to understand. You have to make sure that everybody you're interacting with, number one, understands why you're doing the projects you're doing. And hopefully that is understood. But what role do they play and why they are important on the project? This is why we need you. This is why you bring value. You know something. You have knowledge. You have nuggets that we need to get out of you to understand. And it's not just about walking into a room and trying to gather the requirements and trying to get all of your work done to meet a deadline. It's treating people like people and really making them feel that they're a part of this transformation that you are doing for your organization. And then communication methods are key as well. There are different ways to communicate. It really depends on how your team is structured. If you're a virtual team, which many of us work in virtual teams where we're working with different time zones, right? We're working with different areas, even areas in the U.S., the different time zones in the U.S. will get.
Yeah, you have wide differences, don't you?
Yes, we do. And I work across all of the different time zones in the U.S. On my day-to-day job, and my days are really heavy from 10 a.m. till about 4 p.m. because that's the time where you can pretty much get all the time zones in there at the same time. So you kind of know that, right? But is there an opportunity to use video conferencing where you actually get to see the person, or to use Skype? Many organizations use Skype, or Zoom, somewhere where you can get that face-to-face interaction, though you may not be located in the same area. It's not always possible, but if it is, that way of communicating, getting to see somebody, getting to see body language, things of that nature is really, really important. And then also take time to understand how the people that you are interacting with like to be communicated to. Some people prefer email. Some people prefer, if you have a question, pick up the phone and call me. Some people prefer instant message. So many different communication methods. Really, it's taking time to understand the individuals, the stakeholders that you work with, and how to work with them in the best way possible to get your work done. And then another thing I'm really huge on I like to do a blend. There's 4 things I'm really huge on. I like to do a blend of visual and textual representations. You have people who are real visual, and you have people who are real textual.
Both covers the lot. And it gives you a holistic view from the visual, but it gives you the details of the textual.
Exactly. Yes, it covers a lot. So don't get so much in one way of thinking or one way of doing it that you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to be flexible, and you have to work through that, and you have to figure it out. But I found when you have that visual, there's been many times, especially when you work with executives who are really rushed for time, and you have to present a business case, or you need direction on a decision. A lot of times, if you can just give them a visual with some bullet points, they're good.
Yeah.
But if you give them a huge document, they're just not going to take the time in most cases to read it because they don't have time. So just being able to feel comfortable doing that, giving that visual and textual representations of whatever the work that you're doing is really great. And then finally, recognize people. It's okay to say, you did a great job today, or thank you for doing this, or you know what, thank you for just coming and being engaged and participating in the meeting. Recognition goes a long way. The 2 words, thank you, goes a long way. It doesn't have to be a huge pomp and circumstance about it. Just make sure that you figure out how people like to be recognized. Some people don't like to be recognized in public. Some people prefer private recognition. Just figure that out, but do recognize them. They need to be recognized. It helps to bring that inclusion and to make them feel like they're a part of something bigger. So those are some of the tools and tricks and techniques that I've learned as I've worked with many different cultures, many different people, and in many different areas of the world. Those are the things that I found to really work well.
Okay, that's super, and that makes sense. I would agree with all of those. They would all also work well in my experience, and are actually really important, whatever project you're on. Yeah. Okay, we have a question now from this side of the pond, from Adrian in the UK. My question, and I've got to agree, I'm with Adrian here. How do we avoid getting caught up in our own echo chambers? It's easy to see how others get stuck in a certain way of thinking. Perhaps they read particular newspapers or watch particular TV channels. But in reality, don't we all suffer from this? We tend to surround ourselves with friends and colleagues who think the same as us. So we end up preaching to the choir, so to speak, and there's a risk we get stuck in our own comfort zones. So Paula, what would you say to Adrian?
This is a good one. That's a really good question. This goes all back to how do you get comfortable being uncomfortable, the whole topic of this conversation, right? So when you go into diversity and inclusion, number one, you have to go in with an open mind. You have to step away from everything you know, you believe in. Not saying that you don't keep your beliefs. That's not what I'm saying. But back away and have an open mind to hear another perspective. Because when you truly embrace the idea that all of us are different and we all have something to bring to the table, it opens up such a way of learning and knowledge and education. It's unreal. So the first thing that I would say is that you need to understand first who you are.
Yes.
What is your diversity? What do you believe in? What makes you up? You first need to understand you. Because once you understand you, right, you will understand why you react certain ways to certain situations. I was brought up, as just a personal example, I was brought up in a very religious household of the Christian faith. My mother was a minister at the time. I spent a lot of time in church. I also preached at one time as well. I spent a lot of time at church. So you can imagine being in the church, you are taught a lot of things and you have a lot of beliefs. What I also didn't realize as I was going through life is that I was extremely biased. So as I was getting older, those were the things I kept, right? The belief that I had, no, you are supposed to live a certain way. You are supposed to do certain things. You are supposed to act a certain way. And if you don't act that way, then something's wrong with you. You're not living right. You're wrong. I've got to do everything I can to get you on the right path. And that's not the case.
That sounds rather controlling.
That is not the case. Ooh. Very much so, doesn't it? Right? That's not a good... I began to realize that is not the right way to live, and that is not how you should approach things as I got older and I moved out on my own. And I started experiencing the world and connecting with people who came from different backgrounds, who might even have the same religious beliefs I did, but approached it different, did things different. And so then I started to realize, you know what, I'm pretty shallow and biased. That's a hard pill to swallow.
That is very hard, isn't it, when it hits you?
It is. Yeah, you have to be truthful with yourself and say, you know what, you need to change. You're missing out on so many great things because you're in this box and you're not letting anybody get you out of this box, but you're missing life. You're missing the world. So I had to understand why I was the way I was. Just like we do in business analysis, I had to determine the root cause.
Yep.
And there was no ill will towards it. It wasn't, the root cause wasn't I was a mean person. I just, at that point, didn't know any better because I was so into what I was doing. So I had to open that up. And I had to change things about myself, the way I communicated, not always having to have the right answer, and not avoiding conflict, right? I used to avoid conflict a lot. You can't avoid conflict. You have to be able to listen to others' perspectives respectfully, even if you still don't disagree to disagree. So that's what I would say first, understand who you are, because that's going to open up a whole lot of why you react a certain way you do. Then you need to understand why you don't want to get out of that comfort zone. What makes you so uncomfortable having a conversation with somebody who doesn't believe the same things you believe, who doesn't do a technique the same way you do? What is the root cause of that? Is it fear? Is it fear of losing power? Oh, now I'm not the smartest one in the group. Now there's somebody else who can do something better than me. Are you threatened by that? And if you are, that's really your own personal issue because it's not the other person. There's something within you that's making you feel threatened. You have to really get to the point of understanding why you don't want to get out of that comfort zone. As Adrienne said, why do you only migrate to people who think the same as you? Is it because you don't like people to disagree with you? You always want to be right? What is it? Because in all honesty, I have people of all different age groups, level, the ways of thinking, educational levels, and they all add value to my life in some way, shape, or form because they open me up to something that it may not even be my reality, it's their reality, but they open me up to something to where I can understand better. So you have to understand why you don't want to get out of that comfort zone. And then once you figure all that out, which seems like a lot, but once you figure all that out, then you need to determine the areas on which you are going to say, I will no longer allow myself to be hostage to this way of thinking. I'm going to break these chains off, and I am going to accept people and listen to them, even if I don't feel comfortable, but I'm going to do it because I know it'll make me a better person. And it's going to be a journey, and it's going to take time. It took me a few years to get to that point. It's going to take time. And there are still times now, and I think all of us can admit this, when we are in an uncomfortable situation. And I think we can all say that. How do you react to that, though? Because that's the only thing you can control is your behavior and your reaction to it. So a lot of it is really understanding who you are, why you are the way you are, and what you want to change.
Yep. So once you have all of that, but with things, as Adrienne says, like Facebook and other ways of communicating, even if we've gone through that and had that opening up experience of being much more able to be comfortable being uncomfortable, it almost feels as if our worlds are closing down a little bit around us, the people we see all the time, and as Adrian says, those echo chambers. What do you do, Paula, that sort of connects you with people that are outside of the norm for you now?
Right. So it's funny you mentioned Facebook, because I was talking to a friend yesterday about how Facebook was really getting on my last nerve yesterday with some of the stuff that I was seeing posted. Sometimes I just have to get off social media and take a break because there's just too much going on social media. Right?
Yeah.
But, you know, when the world is closing in on you, because and there is a lot going on in society right now. There's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of sadness. There's just a lot going on. The first thing I try to do is it's easy to get kind of sucked into that stuff and get in a place where you are just, I don't want to say depression. Depression is too strong of a word, but get into a place where it's real dark. Let me put it that way. It's real dark.
Yep.
One of the things that I found that I really need to do to get me out of that space and to connect with other people is how I leverage social media is like LinkedIn, Twitter, probably are two of the ones that I do most, is I actually watch who some of the people that I respect, who they're following and what they're looking at. And I start to look at some of that information as well to get a different perspective. And if I find it very interesting, I start following as well because it's a different perspective. It may not even be something that I would have looked at to begin with, but just because I have a friend or a colleague who I network with who's interested in it and has found value in it, I try and connect up that way as well. And then that allows me to be able to connect in when I can, and I don't feel pressured that I have to necessarily be somewhere or network. Also, in my community here in Iowa, I do a lot of volunteering in the community, and I go to many different events that are not the most comfortable for me because it's very different. It definitely gets me out of my comfort zone because in some ways I'm a little bit of an introvert. There's sometimes I just like to sit in the back of a room and just observe and not say anything. And in a lot of these situations, they make you get up and do stuff and try different things. That gets me out of my comfort zone too. So I try and consciously find ways either through my existing network or if I get invitations or I look on the community online to see what events are going on. That's how I try and connect to get out of that, as Adrian called it, that sort of like echo chamber where you're kind of just caught in and the world is closing in on you. I have to try and push out. And I also try and go to events that will add value to me. Not events that will get me riled up and angry, but events that will add value, inspiring, motivating, give positive energy as much as possible.
Wow. Okay. Absolutely. Same here. Ironically, quite a lot of the volunteering that I do is through a church, and it's one that I'm always encouraging and challenging, and they're very much not controlling, I think, in the way that maybe you experienced as a small child. Right. Interesting. But yeah, meeting lots of different people in lots of different ways and linking locally as well. Okay. Yeah. Lisa has a question. It's a bit broader than diversity, but it's what do you see as the biggest challenge to business analysis in this new decade that we're in now?
The topic that I keep seeing coming up, which I find very interesting, is what is going to happen to the role of the business analyst? Where are we going? What is that role going to be? What is a business analyst? And I do agree there are many organizations, the IIBA, and many organizations who've given a great guidance on what being a business analyst is. What I would say is don't get caught up in worrying about the role, the title of the role. Worry about the value that you add to an organization. The biggest challenge is business analysis is still, depending on who you talk to, a very generic term in some ways.
Yeah,
there are some organizations who have truly embraced what a BA should do, and then there's other organizations who've made up what a BA should do. And so it gets really hard to know, well, where do I fit as a business analyst? But the one thing I'll tell you is that the skills that you have as a business analyst are transferable anywhere. They are very
Absolutely.
unique skills, and if you do them well, you can almost go into any industry and into any company and perform those same skills. So it's more about not getting, to me, from what I've been seeing, not getting caught up in so much of the title, but what is the value you bring to the organization? And that is broad because it depends on your organization and how the organization is set up. You could be a true BA where you're working with the business, but I know many people who are more technical BAs or system BAs. The gamut is just, the spectrum is massive. So to me, I would say what I've heard and what I've had a lot of when I talk to clients and when I talk to peers is really trying to figure out where do you fit, which has been a challenge not only for this decade, it's been a challenge for decades. Where do you fit is still a challenge to me. And not to just jump to what the latest hype or the latest buzzword is. Don't jump to that. Really understand what value do you want to bring to an organization? What energizes you? What motivates you? What's your passion in the business analysis world? And go for it and rock it out. That would be my answer, because that is a very broad answer, but that's just one thing that keeps popping up in my network. Where do we fit? What's going to happen to the BAs? Are BAs going away? Yeah.
Oh, no, there's no BA in Scrum. Oh, no, we're doomed.
Right.
And then you say, actually, you still need business analysis. Yep.
Exactly. Exactly.
Super. So I'm going to now jump all the way to back to the UK, because Lisa was from the USA. Across the pond. So if someone was new to the business analyst role, what would you say is the key competency for them building a successful career in business analysis, says Claire?
Key competency to me would be, I don't know if I have just one. To me, it would be building relationships and communication. And this is why I say that. I have found, as long as I've worked, and I've worked in business analysis, well, I've worked in the project world for 21 plus years. And I've worked in many different industries, as you've mentioned before in my bio. The one thing that I always see that was common is that the business analysts would go in there and do their job. Their job is to understand the needs of the business, gather the requirements, but the interpersonal wasn't there. You have people who you could potentially be bringing into a workshop or gathering session who don't even know if they're going to have a job after this project you're doing.
Yep.
Because it could be taking some of the things they do and making it automated. Take time to build that relationship. Take time to build the trust and the credibility you need so that person feels that you're really there to support them, not just there to get a job done. Take the time to build the relationships to understand how people like to work, pet peeves, the things that motivates them and energizes them. It makes a huge amount of difference, because once you build that relationship, a lot of the times those individuals will bend over backwards to do anything for you. And I'm a witness of that. As I mentioned to you, Penny, in talking, that I am now over, and you mentioned it in my bio, a business process team. So we do business process management. It's something new to our organization, and I have a lot of experience and background in that discipline, and so I have this wonderful opportunity to do this work.
So
but I must work with 40. Yes, exactly. And I work with maybe about 43 different people, 43 different groups.
Yep.
Because of the complexity, right? So here I am. The majority of these people don't even know who I am, right? But I have to build relationships because I need them as much as they need me. I need them to help me do things with these processes. And so I built relationships with all of them, and I understand how they work. And the credibility that I've gained from doing that work up front is phenomenal. If I send an email, they're pretty much like, we have an email coming from Paula Bell. We need to open it. What's going on? There's something legit there. And it's only because I treat them like people. I need them just as much as they need me. So building those relationships and that trust and that credibility is huge and makes your life so much easier, especially when you have challenges or obstacles. You can rely on those people. I have a control partner who I don't know what I would do without him. He's one of the best control partners I've ever had. And if I have any sort of issue, he's got my back. Quick, too. He is very quick to respond to me and everything. And I don't know what I would do without that. So building the relationship and then communication, how you communicate with individuals. I have seen people whose communication has been so aggressive and so mean that people just don't want to work with them. A meeting pops up, they're like, oh, do I have to work with this person again? Sometimes you just need to change up your communication style. You're not changing who you are. You just got to change up your communication style, because some people like direct and straight. That's how I am. Give it to me straight. I want direct. But there are some people you have to ease in a little bit. Can't come in just direct. So those sort of things will help you be a better BA and get the work done. They already know you have the expertise on what needs to be done as a BA. That's why you're in the role, one would hope. You already have that expertise. You already know what tools and techniques you need to use and whatnot, or you're learning that, because that's all experience. But the one thing that's important, if you cannot build relationships for people to work with you and you cannot communicate, it is going to make your job really, really hard to get anything done.
Absolutely. Right. All the way to Australia now with Ian asking a question. What advice do you have for a BA from a diverse background, which could be sex, gender, race, sexuality, religion, entering a Western stroke male workspace and seeking to elicit through interviews or workshops? What are some good techniques that break down the entrenched dynamic so that individuals are more willing to challenge their biases and open up to discussion and information sharing?
Interesting. So, as a Black African-American woman, I've had some of these challenges where I've had to go into different industries and different organizations where I was definitely not the minority. Not the majority, I'm sorry. I was that minority. And I had to gain that leverage, unfortunately, to be heard and to add value and whatnot. The one thing that I would tell people is, number one, be yourself. You have to be who you are. Do not be somebody you're not to fit in.
Absolutely.
Don't try and assimilate to an organization and then you put up this facade of who you are, and you can't be the real you. Number one, that's draining and that's too much energy. So what I would say is, number one, first be who you are. Tell them who you are. Be proud of who you are. Introduce yourself. Do an icebreaker at your workshop. Get to know them. Don't just jump right into the work. Take some time and get to know the people who you're working with. Make sure you have, if you're doing an icebreaker, make sure it's appropriate and you have some good questions that will get you to where you want to get to. But take a minute, just like I said earlier, and get to know the individuals in which you work. And go in there with confidence. Don't be intimidated by the environment. Go in there with confidence, because some people prey on weakness, and it's unfortunate, but they do. So you have to have that confidence. You're going into this organization. You've got it. It's new people, but you've got this. So go in there with that confidence. And as far as good techniques to break down the dynamic, again, icebreakers I found to be great to try and just break down any uncomfortableness that might be in the room as a way of just opening up and getting people to talk. Even people who are introverted will still do an icebreaker. You just don't get too personal and things of that nature, but they'll do an icebreaker. And another technique is, if you find that there are people who are dominating the conversation, call other people out whose voices haven't been heard. So if you have Paul who's dominating the conversation, you might say, Penny, I haven't heard from you yet. What do you think? What are your thoughts? What have you experienced? And try and bring them in so all voices are heard. Because sometimes you do have those individuals who like to dominate. Again, I don't think it's ill will. I always try and assume positive intent before I do anything else. But sometimes you're going to have to bring those people in to talk. And then if you have, it depends on the type of bias that you have. Sometimes it's great to challenge the bias as it's worded. A way you could do that is, if you feel you need to have a one-on-one conversation, do that. You may not want to have a conversation like that in a group. You might want to have some one-off conversations and just get to know the person a little bit more and understand why they feel the way they feel and gain that understanding. There might be a very good reason why they are the way they are. And so just having those one-on-one conversations when you want to help break some of those obstacles that happen can be very beneficial.
Okay.
Did I miss anything in that question there, Penny, that you...
No, sounds good. I think there's one thing I'd add on, which is with icebreakers, certainly on this side of the pond, I find that they work far better, icebreakers, energizers, and so on, if they're related to the topic that you're doing, the focus that you have for the day. That's what I'm finding now, as opposed to, I sort of build it in, as opposed to having, right, now we're all going to do an icebreaker and build towers of marshmallows and spaghetti. I sort of would design it into the day and bring things in that sort of fit. I don't know whether that fits with you.
No, that is great advice. I would agree with that. Usually when I do my icebreakers, if I'm doing a multi-day workshop, the first day is really trying to get everybody on the same page of what the project's about, why we're here, what we're doing. I do more of a generic one, maybe tell me who you are, what role do you play in the company, how many years you've been in the company, just to try and get an understanding of the expertise and who's in the room. And then, yes, I totally 100% agree. If you can definitely make the icebreaker relatable to the topic and the project that you're on, not only is it a great way to just kick off your morning or afternoon, it's also just a great way for people to remember your workshop, too, because it's so different.
Absolutely. You know, Paula, our time is racing by, so if I can ask you one last question and you could give me a short and focused answer. This is Andrew from the UK saying, why should my stakeholders care about diversity on their change projects? I think you probably already answered it in general, but could you say something focused that would bring it all together and wrap up the session for us?
Sure. Diversity is powerful and helps bring stronger organizational transformations when you embrace it and when you allow people to bring themselves to the project. You will have a more powerful solution because individuals are going to bring different aspects, different perspectives, different knowledge that you may not even have thought about. So it's important to ensure that you are not only recognizing the diversity on your team, but being inclusive of that diversity on your team.
Brilliant. We could carry on for hours. We've had lots of fun today, but we are coming to the end of our time. So thank you so much, Paula, for taking part in this summit. It's really nice to have had a focused time having a conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again next time we're in the same place, perhaps BBC Con this year, which I will be going to.
All right.
And I'm sure that everyone listening in today and people replaying later will find it really useful. It'll help them to think about really positive things they can do, things that they can actually get to understand themselves and examine themselves and reflect as well, and then use that to change how they work with others, and remembering that relationships and communications are core to any role, really in business, and especially if you're doing business analysis. So much to think about and things you can start working on immediately. Now, I know people listening right through to the end at this stage, they'll really want to know more. So where can they get to find out more about you and your services to business analysts?
Yes, so my website, if you go to www.paulaabell, make sure there are 2 A's.com, you will see a lot of what I have going on. My blog is on my website, and so I'm doing a 6-part series on levels of perspective this year that I'm really excited about. I'll have some guest interviews, blog posts. It should be a ton of fun. So you can join me there, as well as the services that I offer to business analysts is I do have my own consulting company, and I do BA coaching, consulting, but I also do leadership coaching as well as career development and self-development coaching as well. So I have worked with BAs in all of those areas, And I've had a joy and a ton of fun. And I actually have some clients in the UK right now. I love working with
Wow.
individuals in the UK and learning. Yes, I have clients. I've had clients from Australia all over. So it's been a ton of fun. I love doing it. So you can check me out there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Paula. And thank you very much to everyone who's listened right through to the very end. You really are superstars. You've listened all the way through. Now, if you'd like to be able to listen again in the future, or now we're on day 4, if you've had to miss any of the sessions, day 1 through to 3, you can upgrade to get an all-access pass. You can get those at basummit.com/upgrade. And really a big thank you to everyone who does that, because that pays for the website changes and transcriptions and so on that come to the people who get the all-access pass. I couldn't do it without you, so thank you. And thank you very much, Paula.